It is not our sinlessness that brings us closer to God, but rather our hearts. As Christians, we obviously battle with this idea of sin because God gave us these commandments and told us not to sin, and it was sin that took us far away from God. And now we obviously battle with this legalistic mindset because we feel like we need to do these things to earn God's love and to get closer to God, right? When I sin, I'm really far away from God and God doesn't love me. But when I'm sinless, which we can never be sinless because read the Gospels, right? That's why Jesus came to die for us. He had to die because we couldn't pay the price. We could never get close to God again because our sin separated us from God, and Jesus had to cover the gap because he was the only man who lived a sinless life, and he came and died the death that we were supposed to die, right? Because we weren't able to get close to God because we're just very sinful in our nature. And as Christians, we battle with that, right? We really do grapple with that. But I think it's important for us to realize that it can never be our sinlessness that brings us closer to God, because we can't be close to God through our own strength. We can only be close to God because Jesus came and died for us. And thanks be to God for that, right? John 3:16, we all know it. For God so loved the world that he gave us his one and only Son, so that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life, right? It's through Jesus. I think we can all understand that now. But we still struggle with the legalism, right? With the legalism part. And I just want to quickly touch on the faith versus works aspect, right? And if you struggle with understanding faith versus works, just go read the book of James, bro. Like, book of James just cleans it out. You can also read a lot of Paul. Paul has a lot of books where he speaks about them. I can't remember the exact books, but I think it's just all spread around because we just read a lot of Paul's books. But the book of James, excellent. Like, it will lay it out for you. It's the one that says, faith without works is dead. Like that's where that whole thing is, right? And he goes through the whole thing. But to put it simply, we cannot get to heaven through our works because we have a sinful nature and sin has separated us from God. So we can never do anything to get to heaven. We only get to heaven through Jesus Christ. But if we truly have faith in Jesus Christ, if we truly have sincere faith in Jesus Christ, and I think that's where a lot of us miss it. A faith in Jesus Christ is not just, oh, I believe in Jesus, I believe in God, or I believe God exists. That's not faith, right? Because as it says, I don't know which book it was, bro. I forgot. But there's a passage in the Bible, I think it's in the Old Testament, where it's like, oh, so you believe in God? Well, yippee-ki-yay. Even the demons believe in God, right? That's not enough. But your faith in Jesus Christ is true, sincere faith. When Jesus says, take up your own cross, that is your true faith in Jesus Christ. That you fully understand what he did for us, what he did for us, how much he loves for us, and that he is Alpha and Omega, right? That's truly having sincere faith in Jesus Christ, and your life, that belief manifests itself in your life in a way that you could never replicate that through your own work. So sincere faith in Jesus Christ is what gets you to heaven. But if you truly have sincere faith, you will want to do all the good things, right? So it's not the good deeds that get you to heaven, it's your faith that gets you to heaven. But if you have sincere faith, you will want to do the good things. I actually saw a comment today. I was watching some video about once saved, always saved, and somebody commented where they said that I do not believe that if you are saved you can live in your sin and not be convicted about it, right? And I think that's just an excellent thing that ties in very well with this, right? That yes, you will still sin, but because you have sincere faith in Jesus Christ, if you're truly saved and you have sincere faith in Jesus Christ, you'll want to go do the good things. You will want to, right? But that's not what saves you. It is Jesus who saves you. Now, let's get into the crux of legalism. I think something I learned when I was watching Cliff Connectley. He was on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, and Patrick, I think he asked him about, because Patrick always asks about how Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world and all that stuff. And he's like, why is it that in America the biggest conversion that's taking place is American women to Islam? And Cliff said, I don't really know, but my guess would be that they're looking for some kind of structure. We live in this world that's got full chaos. To go into Jordan Peterson terminology, right? We go into this world full of chaos, and they're kind of searching for order. And Islam is kind of the most rigid, structured religion that they can think of. But it was interesting. This is what Cliff said. It was interesting that the people that Jesus butted heads with the most were the most legalistic, most traditional, most rigid people on the planet, right? The Pharisees. That's who Jesus butted heads with. And the reason he butted heads with them was because they lost the heart of it, right? They were so focused on the law of Moses and, Torah and all the commandments and what we're supposed to do. that they lost the heart of it. They lost the heart of it. I think he said that, they took it further than God intended, right? Think of like, oh, there's so many things, bro. Like the fact that Jesus walked around with sinners. Like the Pharisees looked at him and they're like, what the hell is wrong with you, right? Or when there was that woman who committed adultery, and, the law says, if you're caught committing adultery, you get stoned, right? And Jesus was like, let him who is without sin cast the first stone, right? The heart of it is what they lost because they were so rigid and so legalistic. I think that just ties in so perfectly. That's what Jesus came and preached, right? And it reminds me of something my friend told me, where he said that Jesus did not come and like sort of say, oh, the 10 commandments don't matter anymore, but he basically condensed them into 2, right? Love me as I have loved you, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Because if you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not gonna kill them, you're not going to steal from them, you're not going to covet, you're not going to sleep with their wife, you're not going to do any of those things, right? Like Jesus just brought his like love. That's what it is. And again, we can get into another topic where this kind of the abuse of like grace sort of goes on, and I spoke about this in the last video, where it's a fine balance. It's something we grapple with, the legalism side, and then it's called abnomianism side, where it's like, oh, I have grace, I can do whatever I want. No. Right? If you love God as he loved you, you'll want to keep his commandments, right? And if you love your neighbor the way God has loved you as well, if you love your neighbor as yourself, again, you will want to keep the commandments. I think that's just how it works. But I think an important thing for us to realize is that like when we sin, you're no further away from God than you were when you were not sinning, because we can never be sinless. And it's important that when we sin, we run to God, not away from God, because it is God that cleanses that sin, not ourselves. And on that note, I'm going to end the video. You guys let me know what you think of the topic in the comment section below. Until next time, see you guys.